Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. My name is Kaylee and today we are back on our island of Clover, which is going to be our witchy, dark, swampy, forest core type island. It is kind of Halloween related, but it will probably take us a little bit longer than Halloween to decorate this island, but it was inspired by the Halloween season. Today we just kicked out Mo in our last video where we did some code shopping. So today we'll be going for a little villager hunt for the island, and I'm super excited to start getting some of our final villagers for this island. We already have 2 villagers on the island that I want to keep, so I'll quickly open up our map. But we have Nan and Ruby who are going to be staying, and then the rest of the villagers that we have here are going to be leaving. And I know previously I did talk about if I wanted to keep 8 villagers or 10 villagers. And I did decide to go for the full 10 villagers because when I was trying to narrow down the list to only 8, there were a few villagers I was kind of sad about not having on the island. So I just went ahead and updated that to the full 10 villager list. And that way we can have all the cuties that I want. And I am doing this completely wrong. I want to go on a Nook Mile hunt. Give me 1 second. Okay, now we have a pocket full of Nook Mile tickets, so we should be able to go fly now. I don't know what I was doing a second ago. But yes, we have a pocket full of Nook Mile tickets, and we're going to be going to find one of our 10 villagers that we need. Like I said, we do have 2 villagers already that are on the island, so we already have Nan and Ruby. But the rest of the villagers that we're looking for are Rodeo, Kiki, Boots, Dobie, Tad, Roscoe, Cobb, and Coco. I did decide to keep Coco. I know a few of you in the comments were really wanting me to keep her, and I love her and have always wanted her on an island, so I decided to keep her, and I did come up with some backstories for all of the villagers. I want Sally. I kind of want her for like a fall farm island. She's super cute. But definitely not for this island. I did come up with backstories for all of the villagers as well as for myself. Someone recommended it in the comments to make backstories for all of the villagers because it kind of helps pick out the ones that you want, and also if you have a villager like Coco that you want on the island, you can kind of make a backstory that makes it fit a little bit better for the island. So just giving them a backstory makes them fit into the island, even if they don't like aesthetically really look like they fit the island. So I managed to make her a little backstory where she'll fit into the island, and I think the backstory for her is pretty cool, and I will be going over all of the backstories here in a minute, but I kind of want to get some things out of the way. Yeah, so this is actually only the 8th villager on the island, so we do also have 2 more plots that we can place because right now we only have a total of 8 plots on the island. So there will be some future videos with more villager hunting to try to get all 10 of them. So I'm kind of happy that we have all 10 because I've also, with the background stories, I've been trying to align their backstory up with where I want them on my island, and that is definitely not a villager we want. So yeah, I was coming up with backstories, and then next to their little names I was also writing like where they would fit best on the island based on their backstory. So example, Tad, one of his backstory parts is that he's friends with all like the frogs and toads, so to me it makes the most sense to have him in the swamp because that's where you would see a lot of frogs and toads. And so a lot of their backstories I feel like tag into some of the ideas for builds that we have. So to name off a few areas that we have on the island, well, that I plan to have on the island, some of the larger builds. We have the large swamp, which I hope to fit at least 2 or 3 villagers in, and maybe even some like fake houses on the swamp as well. And then I want to do an abandoned church with a graveyard. So there's a villager with a backstory that will fit that area. I also want to do a ruined temple where we could fit in another villager, and behind that temple we can kind of hide the museum because we did upgrade the museum on this island. So I don't think it really fits aesthetically, so I think we can hide it behind some like castle walls or ruined items to make it fit a little bit better. I don't know who this is. Who are you? Oh, Matilda. She is actually one that I was thinking about having for this island, but I don't know. I don't think kangaroos really look like they go in a forest or a swamp, so I decided not to go with her. But what other builds did we talk about? The abandoned church, the temple, the swamp are the big ones, and then I also wanted to do a rock garden with like a witch's circle inside, which is a pentagon, which we picked out in our code shopping video. I actually found a 9-piece coding set for one of those to go in the center of the rock garden. Well, that's the plans for it, at least. Hopefully it works out. I've never made a rock garden before, so I feel like it will be a little bit more difficult to do because I know you have to like almost cover your entire island. So I'll definitely have to watch like some tutorials for that to understand how to actually do it. But yeah, a villager's backstory kind of ties into that, so having them in that area I think will be really cool too. And then I also gave myself a backstory, and it kind of ties in with the idea that I'm the only human on the island, so the backstory makes sense as to why I'm the only human while everyone else is an animal on the island. Well, Coco is like a weird gyroid, but almost an animal. But yeah, I'm super excited that I came up with all of these backstories, and we're definitely not taking Coach. He is a 0 out of 10. I hate him. But yeah, I guess we can start going over some of the backstories. Let me get back to the airport and then we can start going through them. Alright, we are getting ready to take off, and I figured we can just go down the list of all the villagers. I'll start with Adobe, and this is kind of just the order that I went in randomly. I asked ChatGPT for some ideas for like little tiny backstories for everyone, and then I kind of built off of it to make it fit like their personality and their like the style of the villagers a little bit better. So Dobie is the eldest witch in the Swampy Forest, and I obviously went with him being the eldest in the forest because he looks like a cute little old man, so I feel like that really fit him aesthetically. And he inherited all of his powers from his mother and spent centuries protecting the balance of nature. So I definitely wanted some of these villagers' backstories to tie in with kind of like the natural aspect of being like in a swamp, in a forest. So you'll see that trend a little bit with all of the villagers. And his backstory includes a time when he had to make a difficult choice between love and duty, ultimately choosing the latter. So we'll kind of see that in another backstory for another villager that ties in a little bit with the love aspect of Dobie. So I don't know, I feel like that's pretty cool. He's the eldest in the swamp, and he focuses on keeping the balance, and I feel like that goes with like the wise one, or like the older, wiser witch of the like coven. Like they're just trying to maintain the balance between everyone because there's a bunch of young witches just going off and doing crazy things. So I feel like that fits him really well. And let me know in the comments if you like these backstories, or if you have any other ideas. I'm fully open to changing any of them if you guys have better ideas than what me and ChatGPT came up with. So definitely leave those in the comments. And it's Zucker. I don't like any of the octopus villagers, so we're definitely not taking him. But let's see. Our next villager is Cobb, and his backstory is Cobb is the healer witch who tends to the creatures and inhabitants of the swamp. So in my mind, he kind of like looks like a doctor to me. I think in the picture on the app that I use, he's actually wearing like a lab coat, so in my head he's always kind of like looks like a doctor. And I don't know, for some reason he kind of reminds me of like a mad scientist as well, so I think giving him the ability to be the healer kind of like fit him, especially with his glasses. I don't know, he looks like a little spooky with his glasses. And his backstory reveals his struggle with a debilitating illness in his youth, which led him to discover his healing powers at the last resort. So he's kind of like the caretaker, or like the nurse for all the villagers. With his powers, he can like heal anyone. For both Dobby and Cobb, I don't really have a particular area of the island that I want them to be in, so they'll kind of just be like around. Actually, Dobby, I might switch Dobby and another one of the villagers with the magic circle, because with him, you'll see in a little bit, I haven't gotten to that part of his backstory because it ties in with another villager, but I feel like he could fit into the magic circle as well. And this is Caroline, and ever since someone mentioned that Caroline's hair looks all greasy, I can't get over that. Like, just look at how strainy her hair looks. It just looks really greasy, and I used to like her, and now I can't get over that idea of her looking like that. So but let's see, next up is Rodeo. Rodeo is a brooding and solitary witch who specializes in necromancy and communicating with spirits of the forest. So to me, Rodeo looks kind of like, I don't know, a little bit evil. He looks like a judge in his little outfit, but to me, he definitely fits the part of like a witch on this island. And necromancy is something that I wanted to add in to go with the graveyard, so I feel like that really fit him. Out of our lineup that we had, I feel like he fit the graveyard aesthetic the most. It was kind of between him and Roscoe, but you'll see Roscoe's story in a little bit. So he is the necromancy witch of the forest, and his background includes a tragic event where he unleashed a malevolent spirit, leading him to dedicate his life to undoing the damage. So that kind of like that darker backstory, I feel like just fits his vibe. Him and Roscoe are very like dark magic looking, so I wanted that to be incorporated in both of their backstories. And like I said, I want him to be near the abandoned church and the graveyard, because I feel like churches always have those like overgrown graveyards, so I feel like putting him over in that area would make sense, because then he would be around all the graves to like practice his necromancy. And that's Pierce. If you watch Salem, was it Salem or Amanda Files? She has Pierce and Pom Pom in a cute little relationship, and ever since then I've kind of liked Pierce. I think he's super cute. But yeah, we're not going to be taking him. But yeah, that's Rodeo's backstory. He's the necromancer, and he will be living in the graveyard where the abandoned church is. And then next up on the list is Nan, and Nan we already have on the island, so we don't have to worry about trying to get her to move to the island already. Luckily, she was an autofill from our first 3 plots, so that relieves a little bit pressure on me, and I kind of wanted to pick her because of that reason. It was between her and Agnes for this role, because I feel like they're both farm villagers, and that'll kind of make sense with the backstory in a minute. So I was trying to decide between the two, because I also really like Agnes, but since we already have Nan on the island, I figured might as well just use her because she's already here. But she is a reclusive witch who prefers the company of her mystical creatures to other humans. Well, other animals, I guess, because she's not a human. She was once a brilliant botanist in the human world, but sought refuge in the swamp after a tragic accident involving her experiments. So I don't really have a specific place where I want her to go on this island, but I was thinking of maybe making like a small farm for her where she like grows a bunch of crops to practice her botany. So in my head, all of her like powers involve like potions and using these weird like ingredients to make spells and everything. So maybe we'll give her like a cauldron. There was a design code also that I found that looked like a potion wall, so maybe if we do like a shelf that was for potions, so maybe if we find a little bit more room in our design spots, we can get that code so we can give her kind of like a little potion shelf outside. I think that'd be a cute little build for her in her botany. And like I said, I think we can make like a tiny farm. I don't want to have like a giant farm build, but maybe just giving her like random little pumpkins or like wheat fields around her house would kind of tie in with her backstory a little bit. So she'll probably be like in a random part of like the filler area, and then we'll just make the area around her a little farm. And then Tad is up next, and I kind of gave a little bit of story to him as well. But Tad is a young witch who has a unique connection with swamp creatures, particularly frogs and toads. So I thought this was perfect for him because he is a frog villager. And to me, the jocks always look like little kids. So especially when they have like the play hobby. I don't know if Tad does, but I feel like a lot of the jock villagers do. So, and he's tiny, so he just looks like a little kid to me. So his backstory involves a childhood encounter with an enchanted frog that becomes his lifelong companion and mentor. So maybe in the swamp. I do want him in the swamp, so that's one thing. I want him and Boots in the swamp. So I don't know if Boots' story goes into the swamp, but he's an alligator, so I want him near the swamp. But I think Tad in the swamp would look super cute. And maybe we can try using some of the frog models or the Karopi snacks and leave them around his house. Or even if we get like the frogs in the actual containers, we can have them around his house or even inside his house. Maybe his mentor is a tiny little frog that lives in his house, because I do want to decorate all the interiors for these houses for these villagers. So maybe we can incorporate some of the frogs inside the house so we don't have to, I don't know, kidify the outside of the swamp, because I do still want it to be pretty aesthetic, and the Karopi snacks aren't some of the most aesthetically dark witchy items. But yeah, that's his background. He's a kid and he loves frogs, and he has a mentor that is also a frog. So I think that one is super cute and fits him very well. And then we are on Ruby, and Ruby, I am super excited. We got to stay on the island. We found her on our last villager hunt, and I couldn't resist but take her home. And a couple of you also agreed that she could fit this island, so that kind of persuaded me to keep her. And I just love her so much, so I'll do anything to keep her. But Ruby is a mysterious and secretive witch who resides deep within the swamp. Little is known about her past, and her backstory is shrouded with secrecy. She is rumored to have forged a powerful magical artifact hidden somewhere in the heart of the forest. So with her having that magical artifact hidden somewhere in the forest, she's the villager that I feel like we could have next to the Pentagon, because I kind of want that to be hidden in like the forest like the story says. So I think having her next to that area would be kind of cool, because maybe she's the only one that knows about this witch's circle. Maybe this is where she got her powers from. No one really knows where she came from, and I think that's pretty fitting because she wasn't initially on this list, and then all of a sudden she came to be one of the final villagers. So maybe some of the other witches are confused about her past and how she ended up in this forest, which is basically kind of like how she came to the island. We weren't expecting to have her, and then all of a sudden she was a villager on the island. But yeah, so I didn't know if I want her next to the Pentagon or just somewhere random on the island, and maybe we can give her some sort of object next to her house that seems like magical, maybe like a cauldron or something. But I was also thinking of Dobby, and we'll get to Dobby in a little bit after the last villager that we go through ties to Dobby, so I feel like he could also be in the Pentagon, so we'll just have to make that decision at some point. But our next villager on the list is Boots, and Boots again is another one of the villagers that I want to have in the swamp. So Boots is a young witch who is passionate about studying weather magic. He has a mysterious past and came to the swamp seeking answers about his true parentage, which is tied to magical storms that occasionally ravage the forest. So I figured I wanted to have a bunch of different types of witches. I didn't want them to all be like witches of like the same powers, and weather is something that was always really cool to me. So if you didn't know, I actually have a cat named Storm, and she is named after the X-Men character Storm, who controls the weather. So in my head, Boots' powers are like similar to hers, and I guess that doesn't really have to do much with him being in the actual swamp. but he's an alligator and I want him in the swamp, so I just wrote next to him in swamp. And in his backstory, it says he came to the swamp seeking answers, so rather than like seeking answers in the forest, he came to the swamp. So yeah, that's his backstory. And Boots is super cute, and he was actually my first ever jock villager on my island back in March of 2020. So I am super excited to have him back on an island because I haven't had him since then. And I wish we could give the villagers different outfits to wear for like the dream addresses. I know that you can gift them certain items and they'll wear around the island when you're playing, but unfortunately in the dream address they'll just wear their default clothes, and very unfortunately his default clothes is a jester's outfit, which is definitely not fitting for the vibe of the island that we're going for. But I think it's okay. Those like small details I don't think really make that big of a difference, but that's just, oh, it's Drift. I wish he would fit on this island, but we have Tad instead. But the frogs, I just have such a sweet spot for like all the small villagers. So the frogs, the squirrels, who else is small? The cubs are pretty small. I just love them so much. All the small villagers are basically my favorite, and the ducks are really cool. We don't actually have a duck on this island. I was thinking about having Drake, but unfortunately he didn't make the final cut, but I would love to have Drake on an island in the future. I'm also not too sad about not having Drake on this island because he's a little bit more teal than green, so I think the color scheme that we have going right now is pretty cohesive. So he might have ruined that a little bit, but I still do really love him and wish he was on one of my islands. But up next is Roscoe. So Roscoe is a secretive witch who specializes in shadow magic and illusions. His backstory includes a journey through the mystical Shadow Vale where he learned to harness the powers of darkness. So again, like I was explaining with Rodeo, I feel like Roscoe and Rodeo are very like dark magic kind of vibes because they're like all black and look a little bit mysterious. So I have him written down to go next to the temple. So it says here in his backstory, a journey through the mystical Shadow Vale where he learned to harness the power of darkness. So I figured having him next to the temple, maybe he went through the temple and that's where the Shadow Vale is, and that's where he learned to practice his dark magic. So that would, to me, that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense to everyone, but maybe we don't know the true backstory of the temple, and maybe there's like a dark, mysterious history behind it that we can come up with. But in my head, that kind of makes sense for him to have found it in the middle of the forest and then traveled in to kind of explore it and then found this like dark secret that was hidden within the walls of the temple. So yeah, that's his backstory, and I love Roscoe so much. I've never had him on an island, and I really love him, so I'm glad we can finally have him. I actually like a lot of the horse villagers, which I was thinking about the other day, because I was thinking of villagers to have on Chroma, and one of the ones I was thinking about was Cleo, the purple one, because I want a villager of all colors, so I was trying to think of purple villagers. And she was on the list for that. And then I also had Poppy, the like a copy, I think it's gonna copy the like Savannah animal. Oh, and Savannah is another one. The zebra is another really cool, definitely not Klaus. Savannah is a really cool, so I've actually had a lot of horses on my islands because I had Savannah on my island Pebble, and then I had Poppy on Saffron, and then I don't think I had one on Rubble. If I'm remembering correctly, I didn't have a horse on the island, but I do love Roscoe, so I'm excited to have him on this island. And I feel like this grouping of villagers is pretty interesting because I feel like you wouldn't think to have like Tad and like Roscoe and Coco on the same island, but somehow they all tie together. And in a lineup, I'll probably have it on the screen at the bottom, a list of all the villagers. I feel like they're all pretty cohesive in how they look. They're like of the same color scheme. I think Ruby and Coco might stand out a little bit, but altogether I think it kind of works out. So, and then Kiki's backstory is one of my favorites, and I don't have a specific area for her either, so we can just like place her randomly within the island. But Kiki is a shape-shifting witch who has the power to take on the forms of animals that inhabit the swamp. Her backstory includes an early childhood encounter with a shapeshifter that inspired her magical abilities. So I feel like the black cats are always like the shapeshifters among stories, so I feel like this is perfectly fitting for Kiki, and I just love that she like ties into this backstory with her being a shapeshifter and a black cat. And again, I just love her, and I couldn't have a witchy island without the black cat, because I feel like the black cat is so iconic in like witchcraft. Even from like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, she had Salem the black cat, which I think he was once a human and then somehow got like cursed and became a cat. Don't trust me, I don't know if that's really the case, but I know he was a talking cat, so I think that's what happened. If I'm wrong about that, correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure Salem was once a human that got like cursed and put into a cat body. I don't know if that's true, but in my head that's what happened. I didn't like watch that show religiously, but it's just something that I like remember from my childhood, I guess. And then Coco is our last villager. So Coco is a unique witch born not of traditional means, but through the mystical creation of her mentor, the witch Dobie. So Dobie, the powerful, older, wiser witch, actually created Coco. So Coco wasn't an animal that was like born or found her way to the swamp. She was created by Dobie. So I really wanted to give her a backstory where someone of some nature created her for some reason, because as you can tell by like what Coco looks like, she kind of looks like a gyroid. So I wanted to make her not like really an animal or something that is like born through natural ways, but like a creation of witchcraft. So I feel like this backstory fits her perfectly. Dobie was a powerful and ancient witch who had long sought who had long sought a protege to carry on his magical lineage and secrets. And one fateful night, under the light of a rare lunar eclipse, Dobie performed a complex ritual at the heart of the swampy forest, channeling the very essence of the natural world. So that's why I was thinking that we could have Dobie in the Pentagon area for like his location on the island, because maybe he used that Pentagon to create Coco under the lunar eclipse. And we can even maybe include some other gyroids in that build, make like a little rock garden with a bunch of gyroids, which I think I've seen on other people's island. In my head, the idea looks pretty cool. I don't know if we'll be able to actually build it and make it look good, but in my head, I feel like a little gyroid rock garden witchy circle would be really cool. So yeah, I'm trying to decide if I want Ruby next to it because she has a magical artifact, or if we want Dobie. So let me know in the comments who you think should go by the Pentagon. We could even put like Dobie and Coco like next to each other on either side of the Pentagon. That's actually maybe a pretty good idea. And then the last backstory is for myself. So Kaylee is a forest guardian spirit who takes on the human form to interact with the witches. So I'm also maybe a shapeshifter of some kind. Maybe I used to be an animal and then I actually shapeshifted into a human. And her backstory revolves around her origin as a spirit bound to the ancient trees of the swamp, tasked with preserving the forest secrets. So when I heard this line from ChatGPT, I immediately thought of creating a big tree. So I know some people will like make like several tiers of cliffs and plant trees to make it look like one big tree. So maybe that's another build that we can incorporate next to my house. Like they'll use like a bunch of the like these hardwood trees and stagger them in a certain way to make it look like one giant tree rather than a bunch of random trees. So maybe that's something that we can do next to my house if we have enough room. I'll have to look up how people have done it. I don't know if they use like clipped trees or how they do it, but I've definitely seen it. If I can find a picture of one, I'll put it on the screen for you. But yeah, I figured that gave like a kind of like a good reason as to why I'm like the only human on the island, and it has to do with like my powers. And I think it's cool that my like goal is to preserve the forest secrets. So yeah, that's all the backstories for the villagers, so let me know what you think of that. And if you have any other ideas, like I said, I'm fully okay with like changing the backstories of anyone, so just leave your ideas in the comments. I'm also making sure to actually drink while talking through all of this, because when I was streaming on Saturday, I did not take a single sip of any type of liquid, and I actually had 2 drinks in front of me. I had my energy drink and a bottle of Gatorade in front of me, and the entire time of me talking for over an hour, I did not take a single sip of any liquid. So once I got done, my mouth was like super dry. So I definitely need to remember to not only drink water or any type of liquid while I'm recording these videos, because it's been 30 minutes already, so 30 minutes of just straight talking about random villagers. Like, your mouth gets dry, and I just need to get better at hydrating myself in general. I feel like I just don't drink a whole lot of water. Not even water, like I just drink a bunch of like other random things, and by a bunch I mean like 2 cans of like an energy drink and like a Coke Zero, and that's all I'll have to drink. But right now I'm actually drinking like a flavored sparkling water. It's supposed to be like one of the ices, like the ice brand of flavored sparkling water, but it is the Costco brand, so it's like the Kirkland signature, and it's a kiwi strawberry version, and it is so good. They also have like I think it's peach mango, and I think that's my favorite flavor, but that's also my husband's favorite flavor, so we run out of that one really quickly. But luckily it comes with like a 3-pack of different flavors, and he likes the black raspberry flavor or something, and I like the kiwi one, so it kind of evens out as we both have our own flavor, and then we both share the peach mango ones. But yeah, I don't drink a lot of water, and that's something that I'm trying to get better at, because like I mentioned in one of my videos, I don't remember where it was, I was talking about sweaters, but I'm getting worked up for a condition called POTS, and with that condition, one of the conservative treatments for it is to stay very hydrated and increase your salt intake. So I'm definitely like chronically dehydrated, so I've been trying to get better at just drinking in general. So almost always next to me I now have a insulated bottle where I have some type of water with a powder in it that gives you like electrolytes, because also electrolytes are pretty good for managing this condition. So a lot of the times I'll have Gatorade Zero powder, and I have the light blue color, which isn't my favorite. It's Boots, it's one of our villagers. Me so shocked. Hello, Boots. Wow, that was actually pretty fast. It's been 34 minutes since I started this video, so probably close to 30 minutes of just villager hunting, and then we found one. It will probably get harder as we go on, because we'll have less and less villagers to actually find, and there's like 400 villagers or something like that. But yeah, we finally found one. Well said. Alright, come to my island. I haven't seen him in so long. Like I said, he was my first villager, like one of my starters. I had Boots and Plucky as my first ever starters for Animal Crossing New Horizons. And then who else were my villagers on the island? I had Agent S as like the peppy. I think I had Aurora as the normal. I think those are the 2. And then I had Drago as my lazy villager. And then my first ever smug was actually Marshall, so I was super happy about that because he is such a good smug villager compared to some of the options that you get. I remember on my second ever island I got Chops and I was so annoyed because I didn't know that you had to say yes to your first ever smug villager. So when he showed up on my island, I just time traveled to the next day to get him to go away, and then he was still there and I was pissed. So yeah, but here is Boots' plot. I'm so excited to have him, and as you can see, I've actually flattened like the entire island. There's like nothing on here except for fossils. So in our next video, we should be doing the entrance build, which I'm super excited for. We don't have a super large entrance to work on. Let's go down here real quick, but I'll explain it a little bit more when we go to actually build it. But what I'm thinking about is a path that leads up this way and then having a little cute little roundabout with some stuff in the center, and then that will just lead you right up to resident services, and then maybe you can leave out of this way of resident services to get to the rest of the island as well. So yeah, that's the plans, but I'm super excited to get working on this island. But yeah, that's gonna be at the end of the video. I'm so happy that we found one of our villagers. Now we only have, what, 7 more to get, and I hope you enjoyed all of their backstories. I had a fun time coming up with them and bouncing ideas around with ChatGPT. I've been using ChatGPT for almost everything. But yeah, I will go ahead and see you in the next video. Bye, friends!